Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Big reports emerging today that Adrian Newey's time working on the Red Bull Formula 1 project may be coming to an end very soon indeed, based on effectively budget cap constraints within the Red Bull camp. He will move into a different situation at Red Bull Racing, but not involved in the Formula 1 team. This could be a big deal in the near future, especially with the 2026 regulations looming. Very much interested your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. But firstly, because I couldn't get a video done yesterday, pretty busy right now here in Boston, we've got to talk about the Charles Leclerc contract extension here at Ferrari, because lots of different angles to this story. This was coming for some time. It was known that Leclerc was going to extend his contract, but just the manner of the extension is kind of interesting. They don't mention the number in terms of the year, right, to where he's going to be extended to. There were rumours a while ago that it's a contract that runs until 2029, or at least until 2027, with like a 2-year extension clause. That, I believe, is basically what we have here, but Ferrari haven't said it. Charles hasn't said it, but like he says, I believe the best is yet to come, and maybe the best is yet to come for, you know, his therapist's bank account. I know that people have said that, because look, Leclerc at Ferrari, he's had a hard time there, really. Look, he's won some races, he's had plenty of pole positions, but he's not really got close to achieving that World Championship dream as of yet. And yeah, that 2022 P1 at Monaco to P4 was not what he was looking for, but as he says, I'll be wearing the Scuderia Ferrari race suit for several more seasons to come. So several, what is that? They've not mentioned the exact year in which the contract expires, as is quite often the case, but several more seasons. Several to me is, you know, at least 3, right? It's definitely not 2, it's 3 plus, and arguably several could be a fair few more than that. So I would say that it's at least a 3-year extension until 2027, and likely it runs even further than that, because reports are emerging that actually it's basically a 5-year deal that keeps him until the end of 2029, which would be the longest deal on the grid, right? Because Verstappen's contract with Red Bull ends in 2028, so you know, potential 2029 extension here for Leclerc is pretty remarkable. The announcement though has only specified several years, so we are still, you know, having to speculate on that to some degree. Vasseur also kind of gives his side of the angle. I think this is a good deal for both parties, really. Like, Leclerc staying at Ferrari, I think makes sense. Can they deliver a contender over the coming years? I hope so. You know, it'd be nice to see Ferrari back there. They haven't really been for many a year. I do think Fred Vasseur, in terms of a team principal perspective, is probably the man that I have most confidence in over the last few team principals to actually get back there, and his relationship with Charles and the general feeling that this is going to be Charles' team effectively under Vasseur, I think is going to help their cause. And as Vasseur says, we're determined to give him a winning car. I know that we can do it. I know that we can reach our goals. And whether that has to be 2026 or beyond, who knows? But Leclerc's going to stay there. Now, look, will Leclerc be a target for other teams down the line? Probably. Like when Red Bull, you know, who knows what their program is going to be in the near future. They probably want Norris, let's be honest, in the next couple of years. Mercedes are in an interesting spot when Hamilton retires, like Russell +1, like plus who, right? Is Kimi Antonelli, if he's actually as good as he's made out to be in Formula 2, is he going to be ready for the challenge, or is Leclerc an option there? Probably yes, but you know, he's signed this big deal with Ferrari, and apparently if he gets to the end of his contract, he'll earn like 50 million euros. So they're trying to, a year, so they're trying to incentivize Leclerc to stay around, but apparently there are going to be exit clauses after year 3, so as in, you know, he's doing this season anyway on his current deal, then there's 2025, then there's 2026, and there's 2027, and then after those 3 years, potential opportunities for the contract to be broken and he potentially goes elsewhere. But we know that contracts don't mean that much anyway. Like, if, you know, if someone really wants Leclerc and he's not happy in the contract, they'll let him go within reason. And apparently there are, you know, some more clauses with some more flexibility in this contract. So if it's not working for either party, then they can, you know, Leclerc can leave basically, which I think is probably what Leclerc and his team would try to make sure is the case, because they want to ensure that Ferrari do the best job they possibly can. And I think from Leclerc's side, he wants to be confident that if they don't deliver and he does get a good offer from another team that has been performing at a higher level, he can do that. So yeah, details somewhat unknown, but both sides have wiggle room, it seems, going forwards, and there's potentially several exit clauses where both parties can enter the contract or exit the contract should the time come. So I think it's good for Leclerc, really. I think it's definitely good for Ferrari. Leclerc is one of the most talented drivers on the grid, and look, his qualifying pace is absolutely undeniable. And of the drivers that Ferrari have had over the last several years, I think that Leclerc is the most likely to be able to bring them the title. And really, that's when the question around Carlos Sainz has been raised. Contract talks are still, it seems, at a standstill. I can't imagine Sainz is massively happy with the idea that, you know, because this Leclerc contract may have been signed a while ago. There were rumours about that. But the reality is, people thought, well, maybe they're delaying the contract announcement so that they can announce Sainz's extension as well. That's obviously not happened, and talks are that, yeah, they're at a standstill. There's still a gap to bridge in negotiations. Ferrari might be keen to do like a 1-year extension for Sainz to take him through 2025, but maybe not. And Sainz, I think, wants like a 2-year extension at least. I'm sure ideally he would like the contract that Leclerc has, but that, the reality is not going to happen. And that's what Sainz has to recognise, really, that like he's not the number one. Ferrari are not going to treat it like that. And this is also the thing for Ferrari, is that Sainz and Leclerc have, they don't drive the car the same way. They prefer different setups. Let's not forget this most recent season, the car was understeering quite a lot. That was the preferable setup for the SF23 last year, until Japan, when they brought the floor upgrade, was an understeery setup. In the several races preceding Japan, Sainz loved it. Leclerc was struggling more so. As soon as the car went more to Leclerc's favour when they brought the floor upgrade and you could run the car with a snappier front end, all of a sudden Leclerc's just smoking Sainz week in, week out. So that's the thing for Ferrari. On paper, Sainz and Leclerc are a strong duo. I think they are. Do I think Sainz is replaceable? I do, personally. I think there's other drivers you could get instead. And also, is it an ideal pairing from even a driver like perspective in terms of the way they like their car set up? Not necessarily. And is there potential for friction there? Yes. Like, we know what Sainz is like. He's not going to be happy being number 2 to Leclerc, and Ferrari are making absolutely no doubt that that is the way that things are going to be going in the team. They might not say that publicly, but I think it's quite clear based on the evidence we have seen. So, Sainz, I'm sure, would like to stay at Ferrari. It is Ferrari, after all, the red car, but he has to consider other alternatives. And I think it's no doubt that Ferrari are basically just waiting for a better driver. Like, that's the way it seems to me, that they're just waiting around until they find someone who can replace Sainz, they think can do a better job in various different angles. And I'm sure Sainz realises that as well. So there's questions on what the future of that looks like. But yeah, potentially Audi, if progress isn't made in the Sainz negotiations. And even this was coming out with reports that, potentially, I've never heard Norris, I'm not going to lie, until now, linked to Ferrari. But even over the last few weeks, we have seen links from certainly Albon, and then also Gasly was rumoured, kind of interesting, a little while ago, that possibly in 2025, Gasly could come in. Albon is still, I would say, the favourite. I guess Sainz is still the favourite, right? Like, to find a 1-year extension there. But I think it's very plausible that, Albon comes in, or Gasly, or maybe even Norris. But Norris seems pretty doubtful. And if you're Norris, if you're going to leave McLaren, you're probably going to leave for Red Bull, or maybe Mercedes, right? I don't think you're going to leave for Ferrari, given the current trajectory of McLaren, but maybe I'm wrong. Intrigued to your thoughts on that in the comment section below. Plenty else to discuss, though, certainly on the Red Bull side. Now, this is kind of remarkable to me. We know that the reality is that this V-Carb team, which is Visa Cash App RB, is just made so that the sponsors get the airtime, right? It seems they don't want the team to have an identity, which is, I think, what's annoying the fans, is that there isn't a clear, identity of this team at all. It's very clearly a Red Bull B team, and that raises questions as to what the relationship there is like, what it means for the teams, like how is that motivating for the drivers and for the team themselves working on the car. I don't really think that it is. I think they've missed a trick on this one big time. But they confirmed, a representative from Visa Cash App RB confirmed that the initials RB do not stand for Racing Bulls or another phrase. So it's just like RB. So people thought that when this Racing Bulls name was leaked, that then RB just stood for Racing Bulls. Apparently it doesn't, but I'm not really sure how it doesn't. I'm almost certain that it does, but they just don't want to tell us that it does, because this is the entry list for the new season. We see, Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. Red Bull Racing Limited is the company name. The team is Oracle Red Bull Racing. The chassis is called the Red Bull Racing Chassis, and the engine is Honda Red Bull Powertrains. Mercedes is quite nice and simple, really. They have a company name, they have the team name, and the chassis is a Mercedes, the engine is a Mercedes. Now, as we go further down, we'll find here that under, what is the Visa Cash App RB Formula 1 team, is, it also annoys me how, some teams have Formula 1 team, such as Mercedes. McLaren have Formula 1 with the 1, and then Aston Martin do it the Mercedes way, and then a couple of other teams have F1 team. So, okay, whatever, it just kind of annoys me, the inconsistencies here. Same with Alpine, for example. Some teams just go racing, Racing, and then Ferrari is, of course, the Scuderia, and it used to be Scuderia AlphaTauri. That's no longer the case. So we've got Stake F1 team Kick Sauber. The name of the chassis is the Kick Sauber chassis, with, of course, the Ferrari engine. But for RB, the chassis name is RB, so it's just so confusing, right, between RB and Red Bull, right? And but the company name is Racing Bulls Spa. That's the company identity that they're going with. So clearly Racing Bulls does exist. It is a thing that they created, and that's the company name that it goes under. So you're telling me that RB in this team name does not stand for Racing Bulls, which is the name of the company that owns them. I don't buy it personally. So I think this is meant to be Racing Bulls, but they're pretending that it doesn't exist so that they're trying to get the commentators and the fans, I guess, to call them the Visa Cash Apps or something. I don't even know. But people aren't going to do that. People are going to come up with another way, whether it's calling them Racing Bulls, whether it's calling them, V-Carb, I don't know. But just because Racing Bulls is on the entry list, that might well be the identity that people eventually gravitate towards, in the same way that, Sauber is still on the entry list here for Stake F1 team, Kick Sauber, whatever you want to say. However, there was a very interesting article that came out of AMUS over the last couple of days or so, looking at the situation with Red Bull behind the scenes. Now, we've talked about the Italian press and rumours and all this stuff. When AMUS, German press, come out with things, they're usually pretty damn on the money. And this is a very interesting segment here that Daniel points out on Adrian Newey and his future within the organisation. There's no doubt that Adrian Newey is, pretty much the best car designer we've ever seen in Formula 1. The cars that he's made from, his early days, the McLarens, and then, of course, in recent times, the absolute domination that we saw from the RB19 and the Red Bulls, and the ground effect era that he was proficient at back in the day, and then, seems to see air and aerodynamics better than anybody else does. Now, he is obviously given credit with a lot of Red Bull success for good reason. People say, it's the Newey effect, or it's a Newey car, or whatever. Clearly, there's other people also involved in the design process, and it's not just the Adrian Newey show, but nonetheless, he's been the face of their design. And there seems no doubt that if he was to depart Red Bull Racing, the Formula 1 side, then it would be a big loss, right? So this is a discussion here from MUS, that Newey is apparently planning to focus entirely on the RB17 hypercar project. So you guys might remember the 2021 car, the RB16B. They never did the RB17, and the RB18 was the 2022 car. They left the RB17 name for this hypercar project, something similar to the Aston Martin Valkyrie that Newey also helps design, and we'll see some mock-ups of that in a second here, the RB17. But apparently that's the plan here in the medium term, so that one of the 3 high earner positions is freed up for others. So what that means is, under the budget cap, nowadays what the cost cap is, the 3 highest earning individuals that I think maybe aren't the drivers, like the drivers are kind of excluded, also are excluded from the cost cap, right? So your drivers and then your top 3 earning individuals in the entire company, those salaries are excluded from the cost cap because, the cost cap's like 135 million, 140 million, whatever. So if you put like Verstappen's $70 million contract in that, or whatever it is, then that's using quite a lot of your salary, right? So the top, basically the drivers and the top 3 earners, they're excluded, but Newey has been one of those. And they tried, I think, Red Bull to get around this because Newey is technically like a contractor. He has his own company, and they pay the company that Newey owns, basically, like on that basis. But Newey is still like the chief technical officer or whatever of the organization, and therefore I'm not really sure they can get away with that trickery to say, oh no, Newey is an employee, he's a contractor, so therefore he doesn't count in one of these positions. But I think basically the FIA told them, no, he does count. Like, don't try and pull the wool over our eyes. So the reality is they've got to find a solution here. And it seems like Newey is maybe not fed up with Formula 1 precisely, but he's done a lot of that design. He's maybe more interested in working on the RB17 hypercar stuff. And apparently he's going to fully devote himself to the RB19 soon. He's currently working part-time on the F1 team, but of course has an important role, but that is now set to change and he's going to fully go over to the RB17 project. Maybe the other piece of this as well that Marco kind of says is that people are concerned, the FIA is looking at this, other teams are looking at this, whether the RB17, let's say Newey working on that and working on the Formula 1 project, is there any synergy there? Is there any things that he's testing on the RB17 that he can then bring that information to the Formula 1 guys, given the fact that he works on both? Possibly that's a, okay, different car, cars, obviously different things they're trying to perform, but nonetheless, there could be something in that. The FIA is looking at it. Marco says, of course, it's complete nonsense, but they need to find a solution, and maybe the solution is just Newey has to fully do the RB17, because otherwise, if he's working on that and the Formula 1 project, there's potential issues, not just for budget reasons, but also from, competitive standpoint. It's a really interesting, I think, analysis here, because Newey's no doubt been a pivotal part of their success in Formula 1 history and the success of so many cars that he's worked in Formula 1 history. The most successful designer, of course, ever. But if he's being, it's not like he's getting fired, right? But if it makes more sense for both parties for Newey to step away and for them to rely on the team that they've now created and come up with. Now, as I say, it's not like Newey's a one-man show. You've got Washay over there. You've got, Monahan, great designers at the Red Bull project. But, they've lost guys like Dan Fallows. They've lost guys like Rob Marshall over the last couple of years to Aston Martin and McLaren, respectively. So looking forward to, let's say, 2026, especially the change of regulations, there is, I would imagine if this goes through, concerns that Red Bull might not be as best positioned, right? We've seen over the last couple of years the strength of that Mercedes project and the strength of their design team has maybe somewhat faltered with certain individuals leaving, and now Red Bull might be suffering the same thing with a lot of their top guys leaving over the last couple of years, and apparently now Newey might be on his way out as well. So just here are some mock-ups of what the RB17 is meant to look like. This is one example of, what Newey might be working on, and apparently what he's very keen to work on, even more so than a Formula 1 project, because he's designed a lot of Formula 1 cars. He's not, designed so many hypercars quite like this. So very much interested your perspective on all this stuff in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.